Hello, my name's Sherry Forsyth and I'm a peak performance coach, and in the month of October I've been doing a theme of my videos and Facebook Lives dealing with autoimmune diseases, or the invisible illnesses where people can't actually see that you're ill but you really are. And so if you're interested, I did an interview with Meg Hunter on myasthenia gravis. Jeff Player was interviewed on polymyalgia. Then we spoke a little bit last week about chronic fatigue syndrome. And today what I'm talking about is some of the possible triggers or causes of autoimmune diseases, and also the prevalence. So is it something that is not many people are affected by, or are lots of people affected by autoimmune diseases? So firstly, very simply put, and I would just like to add here, I'm not a medical doctor. So I'm giving you some very user-friendly information about autoimmune diseases. It's a condition in which your immune system mistakenly attacks part of your body. So normally our immune system will guard our body against infections and viruses and inflammations, and it will attack those foreign invaders to help us to get well. And normally the immune system can tell the difference between what are foreign bodies and our own cells. Now, in the autoimmune disease, what happens is the immune system gets a bit confused and it can't tell the difference between its own cells and what is a foreign body. So it mistakes part of our body, for example, our skin or our muscles or our joints, and attacks them, thinking that they need to be killed. So doctors don't know exactly what causes these autoimmune diseases, or what causes the immune system to misfire. But let's take a quick look at the prevalence or the statistics of autoimmune diseases. Firstly, there are more than 80 different autoimmune diseases. 80, that's 80. That's a lot of different diseases. And some of the more common ones, I'm sure you'll know about. If you are suffering from an autoimmune disease, please write it down in the comment box below so that we can have an idea of who is suffering from which diseases. But some of the common ones are diabetes, rheumatoid arthritis, multiple sclerosis, inflammatory bowel disease, myasthenia gravis, vasculitis, anemia, celiac disease, chronic fatigue syndrome, poly and fibromyalgia. The list is endless. So many people are infected by autoimmune diseases. And in a 2014 study, it was discovered that women get autoimmune diseases far more often than men. In fact, at a rate of about 2 women to every 1 man. So worldwide, it was roughly 6.4% of women and 2.7% of men. That is a lot of people to be suffering with autoimmune diseases. In the United States, more specific statistics showing how autoimmune diseases are growing. From 1988 to 91, 11% or 22 million people were affected. This is just in the US. From 1999 to 2004, it went up to 11.5%. So we were looking there at 27 million individuals. And more recently, between 2011 and 2012, it went up to 15.9%, or 41 million people. Okay, so if you are suffering from an autoimmune disease, don't feel alone. So let's have a little look at the causes or the triggers that can sometimes result in an autoimmune disease. Firstly, just to let you know that very often there's not a single test that will determine whether you have an autoimmune disease or not. It's usually quite a few. So some of the possible causes. In 2015, doctors found that because children aren't exposed to, or because they are exposed to many vaccines and antiseptics, it means they're not exposed to as many germs. And this lack of exposure to germs results in the immune system kind of being overreactive to harmless substances. So that's called the hygiene hypothesis as to what possibly is causing the increase of autoimmune diseases. But essentially, doctors don't really know. There's not a definitive cause. But there are some common things that are suspected of triggering autoimmune diseases, and they fall under 6 main headings. Firstly, it's genetic, it's our diet, it's various infections, it's exposure to chemicals or environmental affairs. And I'd also like to add another 2 that will probably be part of all 4 of these. And these 2 are stress, our stress levels in today's world, and inflammation. Okay, so I'm going to give them to you again. It's genetics, diet, infections, exposure to chemicals, and I'm adding 2 more general ones, including stress and inflammation. So I'm just going to briefly touch on each one of those. Some of the things I found quite surprising. So with genetics, there are many environmental nutritional triggers, but often they need to be combined with a genetic factor in order for an autoimmune disease to manifest. And so you'll quite often find that autoimmune diseases will run in families. Sometimes also in certain autoimmune diseases will run in certain ethnic groups. Okay? The second factor is diet, and this is a big one. In fact, this is huge. If we are eating high fat, high sugar, highly processed foods, those are no-nos, and they play a huge role in triggering autoimmune diseases. Often it can lead, our gut health is really important. And if there are bacterial imbalances within our gut, that can lead to what's called leaky gut syndrome. So we all have digestive bacteria in our gut, and it's called the gut flora. But if those should get out of whack, mainly because we're eating the wrong things or because of stress, when those bacteria are out of alignment, we get leaky gut syndrome, which means that the walls of the intestine become permeable. And so normally our food is kept in our intestine and our blood is kept in our veins. But when we have leaky gut syndrome, there are food particles that escape out of our intestine and actually go into our veins, into our blood. And then as the blood is carrying the body, being carried around the body, the immune system says, here's something that's foreign. There's a foreign object in the blood. And they therefore start attacking it. Depending on where the blood is at that time, that can influence what kind of autoimmune disease you get. So I hope that makes sense to you, because it made very clear sense to me when I found that out many years ago. If you are wanting to follow somebody, there's an integrative or functional medical doctor called Dr. Tom O'Brien. And he puts out lots of information about autoimmune diseases. So I would really recommend that you follow him. Sticking with the diet, okay, how diet affects autoimmune diseases. Gluten is a real no-no. It's often blamed for chronic inflammation, which is, again, one of the primary causes of autoimmune diseases. It contributes to the bacterial imbalance and leads to leaky gut syndrome. Okay, so we need to avoid gluten. We also need to avoid sugar, the white poison. Okay, they also contribute to inflammation and to leaky gut syndrome. Dairy is often a culprit as well. Milk, cheese, butter, they all are common triggers, thanks to a protein found in dairy known as casein. That's C-A-S-I-E-N. And this protein causes inflammation, and inflammation leads to autoimmune diseases. A surprising one for me was nightshades. So this is a whole group of foods that I always thought were very healthy, but they can contribute or cause flare-ups if you are suffering from an autoimmune disease. So these are bell and hot peppers, tomatoes, potatoes, eggplant, and chilies. Now, often those are very healthy, but if you are prone to autoimmune diseases, or if you are suffering from one, then maybe you should not include those in your diet. The next one is grains, which we know because there's lots of gluten in the grains, it causes an autoimmune disease. So rice and oats and sometimes even corn will affect the gluten and cause the inflammation. Okay, and then the most surprising of all, which really saddened me in fact, was that chocolate. Chocolate can also trigger autoimmune diseases, because it could just be because there is sugar and there's dairy, which are both no-nos for eating. But others think that there might be some compounds in the chocolate itself which is similar to those in gluten, and hence the immune system then sees it as gluten and attacks it. How sad is that? Okay, so chocolate is also off the menu if you're suffering from autoimmune diseases. Right, moving on to our third main area of concern that causes autoimmune diseases are infections or inflammation. So very often an autoimmune disease will happen after a viral infection. They are the most common trigger of autoimmune diseases. I myself had chronic fatigue syndrome, which was triggered by a flu that I didn't rest, I didn't treat myself as I should have, and it then the flu went over into an autoimmune disease. So some people are saying that the reason that a virus develops into an autoimmune disease is that the immune system attacks the viral cells to start with, as it should, so that we can heal. But then the other little things come into our body, and the immune system thinks that they are viruses. Okay, so it could be a particle of food or whatever it is. Because they seem to resemble a virus, the immune system gets confused and attacks those as if they actually were viruses. Okay, I hope that makes sense to you. The last one that is also huge and very underrated is the exposure to chemicals or toxins. In other words, what we find in our environment. What we eat, what we breathe, what we drink are all affected by toxins. Even the creams that we put on our skins are full of things that can react to us. All the perfumes that are put in, the cleaning agents, there's a lot of things that we do as a matter of course today, which lead to toxins coming into the body, including mercury, lead. Fillings in our teeth can be part of it. So that's the first thing. Secondly, there are drugs. Some people develop an autoimmune disease which is triggered by a prescribed medication. Okay, and remembering that medications are actually toxins. So people who have been prescribed certain medications can then develop an autoimmune disease. And it's been shown that there are over 100 different prescription medications that can cause autoimmune diseases. And how's this one for a surprise? Sunshine. Research has found that some autoimmune diseases are exacerbated or inflamed by exposure to sunlight. So even though it is very healthy and we need it for vitamin D, if you've got autoimmune conditions, please take care. And the last one I want to discuss is stress, which is so incredibly endemic in our society today. Outside of infections, stress is the second highest cause of autoimmune diseases, because it wreaks havoc in our body. It changes our system, it changes our chemistry, and it creates inflammation, it affects our digestion, it increases our blood pressure. And so if we are stressed, we are more prone to autoimmune diseases. So I hope this video has helped you. understand a little bit more about the prevalence of autoimmune diseases and some of the triggers that we need to be aware of. As always, I thank you for your time.